Tina is geopolitical strategist and founder of Fordham Global Foresight. Tina, first, before we get to the UK or anything like that, can I ask you your impression of what's going on in the United States right now? It sort of took a left turn. We were all highly focused on everything court related to Donald Trump, and suddenly now we're focused on whether President Biden could even run for another term.
Well, for me, it was entirely consistent with what we were thinking about this election. There are too many variables, too many new factors and fluidity in this race for it to follow a typical U.S. elections playbook. And that's exactly how it's playing out. Things are starting to come loose.
Yeah, I guess the question is how much more loose do they become before things start to, I guess, become tighter? And that's certainly a question a lot of Democrats are probably asking right now, Tina.
Absolutely. But what we're observing is how campaigns and leaders, no matter how dedicated they are, can't control everything about the process. That's what we're witnessing now. I mean, I've encountered a fair amount of hostility for, my observations straight after the debate, saying I think that performance was a game changer and age is not reversible. Of course, Biden will do better in other contexts, other environments. He is a very competent politician with a great deal of experience and has presided over an important economic recovery as far as I'm concerned. But Americans are right to ask if he can serve until 2029. And it isn't a matter for his comms team to simply provide reassurance.
Yeah, exactly, Tina. And just by the end of today, we'll have a lot of commentary from Joe Biden. As I say, we're waiting for his comments from Madison, Wisconsin. But if it were to happen that Joe Biden steps aside and somebody else comes in, be it Kamala Harris or Gavin Newsom or whoever it may be, what would that do for Donald Trump's chances of winning? And I mean, we have head-to-head polling right now, but we are still very far away from Election Day when it comes to U.S. elections.
Well, we're very far, and yet I think I'd make the case that if a change is going to take place on the Democratic ticket, it needs to happen in the next few weeks. The NATO summit in 2 weeks' time is a major signpost. Actually, it's next week, isn't it? Mm-hmm. The U.S. will be hosting in Washington world leaders, including the new UK Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, and possibly a new French Prime Minister, almost certainly a new French Prime Minister. So a lot of change in the global environment. That would also be an opportune time for the U.S. Head of state to speak to allies. But that may be a faster timetable than the White House and the Biden team are prepared to look at.
We do have an article out on the Bloomberg about allies being concerned overseas about the current president's ability to win election come November. I'm wondering what kind of pressure, if any, that could put on Biden to step aside.
Well, there'll be reluctance from U.S. allies to put on any pressure, that's for sure. But part of the reason, if not the main reason, why U.S. allies and indeed my CEO and investor clients here in Europe are so concerned about Biden's state is because they are so worried about a return of Trump to the White House. And that is a really consistent view across the political spectrum, just because of the feared implications of a Trump 2.0 on the global trade environment, tariffs, and security. Remember that here in Europe, security with the war in Ukraine, as well as the Middle East, number one consideration, and U.S. consistency on that is very much in focus.
Tina, you probably didn't think you were coming on to talk U.S. Given the British election that we've just had. We suddenly have a new regime. Does anything change in Britain radically pretty soon? And I'm talking about anything from relationship with Europe to fiscal policy to any kind of social policy.
Well, I think British voters certainly hope for a change. They gave the Conservative Party, which, remember, the Conservatives have been in power for 14 years, a real drubbing last night. It was something to behold. And one of the things that will be surprising for your U.S. viewers is that Rishi Sunak is already out of Downing Street. The removal van has been. Keir Starmer has met with King Charles, and it's all change. Same with the Chancellor of the Exchequer. So there's no grace period. There's no lame duck period. There's not even a transition period. The new team will be in their seats in the coming days. A Labour Party government with a majority represents a significant change, particularly a departure with Brexit. And remember, that's probably the signature achievement as such for the outgoing Conservative Party. But the cupboard is also bare for Sir Keir Starmer. And he's really made the biggest promises about returning the UK to growth. Growth here is languishing, and restoring public services. So business is actually backing Labour for the first time that I can remember.
That's a part of his speech. It was this morning for me, but this afternoon for you, that really struck me earlier today, was the idea that government is there to help and that the services are there for the people. They are I mean, you don't necessarily hear that here in the United States. A lot of people think government really gets in the way, and that's certainly the philosophy of a lot of folks here in the U.S. Can you explain how things like the NHS have been under pressure and how it's such a loved organization and how that was so crucial to Labour's victory here?
Yeah. Crumbling public services appear in the top 3 concerns for British voters. It will surprise Americans on the right to understand that the NHS is a much-loved national institution. People look with horror at the United States, and the idea of medical bankruptcies doesn't exist in this country. And so finding a way for the NHS to be more efficient in light of an aging population and everything else is a major task, to be sure, and one that I think any incoming government would have to be looking at tax increases. But the American viewers need to resist the temptation to kind of put everything in U.S. terms. Labour Party has got socialist in its name. It has taken a lot of steps to cultivate ties in the City of London, our equivalent of Wall Street. And frankly, the Conservative Party has not been the party of business for some time. With Brexit, that kind of threw financial services under the bus. Labour will have no honeymoon, and their landslide victory is probably more of a kicking to the outgoing Conservatives. Someone called it a loveless landslide, and I think that that's probably fair. But also, it has been a completely peaceful, civilized, drama-free transition. And I think that should be inspiring for us Americans.
Oh, yes, a drama-free transition. Gosh, when did we last have one of those? I'm really not quite sure. Tina, thank you so much. Can't wait to keep in touch with you throughout the next few months. That's Tina Fordham, geopolitical strategist and founder of Fordham Global Foresight.